Okay, Councillor Tuckwell, we are now live.
Okay, thank you and a warm welcome to a virtual meeting of the Major Applications Planning HS2 Subcommittee for the London Borough of Hillingdon. This is a virtual meeting that is also broadcast simultaneously on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon London. My name is Councillor Steve Tuckwell and I am the chairman of this evening's meeting. We have members and officers with us this evening. I think everybody is well versed in the protocols around use of mute buttons and being called to speak by myself as the chairman. So if we just remind everybody on those. But we also need to do an attendance roll call as we are in virtual format. So when I call your name, if you could just let me know that you're in attendance, and we'll start with the vice chairman for this evening, Councillor Lavery.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. The Labour lead, Councillor Duncan.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brightman.
Just *6, Councillor Brightman. Can't hear you, Councillor.
I can see that you're there though on my grid view. So
yes, if Councillor Brightman isn't able to be heard, then I'm afraid she wouldn't be able to take part in the meeting.
okay, well we'll let Councillor Brightman try and see if she can get her phone unmuted. So we'll go to Councillor Hagger.
Good evening, Chair. Present.
Good evening. Councillor Oswald.
Good evening, Chairman. Present.
Good evening, thank you. And Councillor Morgan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm present.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to officers, we want to try Councillor Brightman again, see if we can get your phone unmuted. *6, I think, is the...
No, I'm afraid not. So, Councillor Brightman, if you are unable to be heard, then obviously you can't take a full part of the meeting, and therefore probably shouldn't stay in the meeting. Okay, but thank you anyway. Thank you.
Okay, that's disappointing, but okay, the technical issues are with us this evening, but that's councillors, members this evening accounted for minus Councillor Brightman. Is that correct, Neil?
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay, we also need to do an attendance check for our officers supporting this evening's proceedings, so I'll just call out your names, starting with our planning officer this evening, Ian Thine.
Present, Chairman. Thank you.
Good evening to you. Our head of planning, James Roger.
I'm present, Chairman.
Good evening. Our legal advisor this evening, Raj Allah.
Good evening, Chairman. Present.
Good evening. Well, the phone line works on that one, that's good. And our Democratic Services Officer this evening, Neil Fraser.
Present, Chairman.
If
Good
you
evening.
can get this working for you, because I've been shut out.
I think we can hear you now, Councillor Brightman.
Councillor Brightman, we can hear you now.
Yeah. Oh, you can. Okay, hang on.
Perhaps just leave it unmuted and we'll hopefully there'll be no crosstalk.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Thanks. I'll put the camera back on then.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
Okay, we're back to full strength then. Good. And welcome back, Councillor Brightman. Okay, let's hope it's not going to be too many technical issues this evening, but in terms of technical meeting control, if we do lose a councillor this evening partway through a lost connection, etc., then I will continue the meeting, which we know is quorum, which is 3 councillors. Importantly, any councillor who does leave the meeting for a period of time will not be able to vote for the item that they were not present on. So that's the attendance and online protocols. We can now move into the main body of the agenda this evening. So we'll start with agenda item number 1 this evening. Apologies for absence, Neil.
Yes, all members are present, Chairman.
Okay, that's good. Agenda item 2 this evening is declarations of interest in any matters coming before this evening's meeting. So I'm seeing lots of nods of heads. I suppose those councillors that are dialing in, speak now if you've got a declaration of interest. No, I'll take that, Neil, as no declarations of interest this evening. Agenda item 3 is to receive and sign off the minutes from the last meeting, which was the 29th of October. Are we happy to have those confirmed as agreed? Again, lots of thumbs up, that's good. Which then leads us to move on to agenda item 4, which is matters that have been notified in advance or urgent, which there aren't any. And I can confirm for agenda item 5 that all matters this evening are being discussed in part 1, which is public. There are no part 2 items. Okay, that's the chairman's announcements dealt with, so we can now start to get into the main body of the meeting this evening. So we'll start with agenda item 6, which is the land within the Colne Valley off Harville Road. So Ian, would you be so kind to take us all through the application, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see that, Chairman?
Yeah, that's all good, Ian. Thank you.
Excellent. Right, so agenda item 6. So this is an application by HS2 Limited for the arrangements to use a lorry route, and it relates to 2 work sites. Worksite 1, which is the storage compound to the south of Moorhall Road and north of Sabay Lake, and Worksite 2, which is known as the Jetty compound, which is to the north of Moorhall Road and south of Corder Lake. And this is to facilitate the construction of the Colne Valley Viaduct. Now, there's various references to Worksite 1 and Worksite 2 and modules 4, 3 and 2 throughout the reports, but I shall refer to them as the storage compound to the south of Moorhall Road and the jetty compound to the north of Moorhall Road. I don't have red line plans in HS2 in the HS2 world. This is the blue line plan, and this is for the construction route. And the area of interest is just this element of the route here. So this is western traffic heading up towards South Harefield. So this is vehicular traffic to and from the west, and it is importantly not going all the way to South Harefield and then down Harville Road and elsewhere. I'll explain the importance of that in due course. And because this is a HS2 Act related application, and the issues are relating to condition and road transportation by HS2 traffic, the issues before us tonight are whether or not arrangements need to be modified to preserve the local environment or local amenity, to prevent or reduce prejudicial effects on road safety or the free flow of traffic in the local area, to preserve a site of archaeological or historic interest. So the 2 issues the 2 issues are related to part 2 on that, which is to prevent or reduce prejudicial effects on road safety or on the free flow of traffic. So that's the main issue for us tonight. So to put this into some sort of context, these are the work compounds across the HS2 route. All the compounds are shown in orange, and the 2 compounds that we're interested in are these. That's the storage compound and then the jetty compound. And overhead, to put more perspective, you can see Moorhall Road going through the middle of the screen. And importantly, the traffic doesn't go down to South Harefield as I described before. So all traffic is coming from the west, jetty compound and the storage compound. Now, this is important because essentially when we come into lorry numbers in due course, the real issues are turning right onto the storage compound and turning right out of the jetty compound. Obviously, left onto the jetty compound is not a dangerous maneuver, it's just moving off the highway, whereas turning right from it onto oncoming traffic would be more dangerous. So it's essentially half of the traffic movements between these 2 that are the real cause for concern in terms of safety, and obviously the total volume of traffic in general as well. HS2 plan here, so it's shifted from north, moving up on the screen, to actually north of the left of the screen. And this is important map to give some context to what these compounds are. Now, when I come to present the numbers to do with these movements at these compounds, you'll note there's an initial spike and then the movements peter out over time. And there's a reason for that. So again, jetty compound, which is north of Moorhall Road on the left of the screen, storage compound to the south of Moorhall Road on the right of the screen. This is all to construct the viaduct, which is running there. And just for ease of reference, you'll see the piers here. Now, what you'll notice on the right of the screen is a yellow line, and on the left of the screen, a blue line. And that is essentially a haul road. So in due course, when these compounds are up and running, most of the movement of vehicles will be to construct the viaduct and will run on the Hall Road. So they will not be going on Moor Hall Road, they'll be running on the Hall Road, and the viaduct is to be constructed from the west, so in Buckinghamshire in the first instance at West Hyde, and moving all the way down to the Colne Valley side of things near Harville Road. So that's important because that allows for the majority of traffic movement associated with these compounds to be run on the Hall Road as opposed to on the main carriageway. So that reduces the time spent of HGVs on this road. So when we come to numbers, this is the total amount of numbers between 4 separate sites. 2 of the sites are in Buckinghamshire, so they are not before this committee. So most of the routes that we saw at the start on the blue line went into Buckinghamshire. Only a small section was in Hillingdon. And the 2 sites, the jetty in green and the pink storage compound. And you'll see that predominantly most of the daily flow of traffic at the start relates to the storage compound and a few movements at the jetty compound. These are daily traffic numbers. So in total between the 2 sites at its peak, it's just under 120 for the day, which is a 10-hour day, so 12 an hour. And if we remember that the principal concern is the traffic moving right onto the southern compound and right out of the northern compound. They're the principal. So half the movements of these would be of principal concern. Just to put this into context, this is the daily movements across all 4 sites, but that doesn't really provide us with the full picture with the 2 sites that we're interested in. The 2 sites we're interested in, jetty compound and storage compound, and you'll notice the spike early on, and then as the viaduct is still under construction, there's still a petering out of traffic movements as the Hall Road takes over. And certainly at the jetty compound, the spikes are even fewer. So if we look at the jetty compound at the top first, the orange movements in the AM peak, so that's a 1-hour peak period at 8 till 9 in the morning. You'll see at its peak, there's just over 10 vehicular movements onto that compound. And then in the PM peak, which is a 1.5-hour window from 4:30 till 6, there's 20 movements. And then you'll see that the numbers are negligible below that. In terms of the storage compound, it's a slightly more active site in the first instance, particularly over the first 15-16 month period. But again, at its peak, we're talking 30 movements in the PM peak, 1.5 hours, and then a little under 20 in the AM peak. So in terms of vehicular movements, officers generally don't have too much of a concern. And one of the reasons for this is because most of the traffic is heading away from South Harefield, and importantly, is not going to join the network along Harville Road, where we have significant concerns with other movements that have been before this committee before. We've obviously previously refused an application for the majority of the traffic in and around Ruislip, Ickenham, and Harville Road going up to Harefield. Importantly, this traffic is not going to be in accumulation with that. There's no interconnection there between the 2 traffic movements. So this is in isolation. And the numbers that we're talking about are generally quite low and certainly not problematic as we saw with the other submissions. Another issue is obviously one of the reasons why those numbers are quite low is because of the construction of the Hall Road. This image that's before you now, you'll see the Hall Road crossing. So at the minute, there's a right turn into a pumping station. This pumping station access is going to be used for the right-hand turn. And then immediately opposite, approximately where my cursor is, there will be a new compound. Now, I understand that you can clearly see it's a heavily wooded area at the minute, and constructing a compound in there might be quite an emotive subject, but that's not before the committee tonight. That compound is dealt with elsewhere under the Act. We're just interested in the movement between this compound on the right-hand side and then a new compound on the left-hand side of the screen. And because the traffic isn't going all the way down to the roundabout at Moor Hall Road and Harville Road, then this is separate in isolation. Now, on the face of it, a right turn onto this site here would be quite problematic, coming to across coming traffic, and then right out of this new compound to be constructed on this left-hand side of the screen, coming onto Moor Hall Road to go west, away from South Harefield, would also be fairly problematic. The solution to this is to ensure that safety and the free flow of traffic, which are the two issues before us essentially before this committee tonight. The solution is a traffic lit junction. So I don't want to go into the ins and outs of what this arrangement is, because this has been approved by Transport for London and our highways team, and it's only there for illustrative purposes to show that this has been the safety and the free flow of traffic has been considered. So traffic movement coming from the west, moving right onto the pumping station access would not be controlled, so the vehicle would just have to wait until a turn. But importantly, the control across coming out of this junction is there's control on this by the traffic lit signals, and then obviously crossing the two carriageways is also going to be under traffic light. These will be on sensors, and they'll be heavily monitored. So whilst it's not an ideal situation, HS2 Limited has to construct a viaduct in this area. The use of a haul route does take vehicles off the road network, and consequently the safest way to ensure that they can cross this road with minimum impact on traffic movements and to maximize safety of vehicular turning is for the use of this traffic lit junction. So in a sense, this is the arrangements that have been put in place. Now, if we consider that the options before the committee tonight are to seek alternative arrangements, if we deem them reasonable, and that's so capable of being delivered, to ensure that there is a free flow of traffic and no prejudicial effects on highway safety, then these are the arrangements that we would seek to modify. It's officer's opinion that these arrangements are satisfactory in controlling the traffic. Obviously not ideal, but the options are very limited, and it seems sensible that the best way to do it is to use the traffic lights and monitor the traffic lights so that the access to and from these sites is managed appropriately. And as we know, that the traffic lights can be changed in terms of layout, sensors and various bits and pieces like that to ensure ongoing safe movement and free flow of traffic. So they're the arrangements in place at this junction. Officers are satisfied that the amount of traffic number movements are very limited compared to what we see elsewhere. And secondly, that the arrangements through these traffic lights are adequate to control the free flow of traffic and also the safety. So as a consequence, the recommendations from the officers is approval. And just to note, so this isn't an informative, but it is to note for the committee, the officers will continue to monitor the impact of the lights, which have been secured through Schedule 4 of the HS2 Act, in collaboration with Transport for London, to ensure that timings and controls are best managed to ensure the free flow of traffic and safe operation of the crossing. Thank you, Chairman. No further presentation matters.
Thank you for taking us through that, Ian. Very extensive and very succinct as always. So thank you for that. Before we go open to members, I'm going to invite Raj just to come in and just give us the benefit of his wisdom as to where we can and can't, as a committee, determine this application. So Raj, can you give us an update from a legal perspective?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Raj.
Hello, very good evening to everyone. The legal approach which I would suggest is appropriate to take following the Court of Appeal's decision in July of this year is to deal with these Schedule 17 applications in 3 parts. Now, part 1 is to determine whether High Speed 2 Limited have provided sufficient information to the Council in support of their Schedule 17 application so that the subcommittee can determine it. And obviously the application is before the subcommittee this evening, so that particular test has been satisfied, so we can put a tick against part 1. Part 2 is to consider whether there are any statutory grounds for refusing the application, and the usual statutory test has to be applied. Now, Ian has already alluded to it in his presentation, and the relevant test in summary is whether the lorry arrangements ought to be modified to prevent or reduce prejudicial effects on road safety or on the free flow of traffic in a local area, and are reasonably capable of being so modified. And as Ian has said, although the proposed traffic arrangements are not ideal, they don't actually fall foul of that statutory test, and therefore there are no grounds for refusing this application. And that is reinforced on the bottom of page 14 of the report before you, where it is said it is not considered necessary to impose, to refuse this application in this particular case. Part 3 of the test is, are there any statutory grounds for imposing any conditions in the event that the subcommittee is minded to approve the application? And again, the answer appears to be no. And again, at the bottom of page 14 of the report, it says that it's not considered necessary to impose conditions in this case. And it's also very important to note that the subcommittee would only legally be able to impose any conditions if High Speed 2 Limited were to agree to those conditions. That is the way in which paragraph 6 of Schedule 17 has been framed, and it is the only paragraph in Schedule 17 where the consent of High Speed 2 Limited is required before conditions can be imposed. So in summary, Chairman, it is legally permissible for the subcommittee to approve this application without the imposition of any conditions. I hope that's helpful.
No, thank you, Raj. Very helpful. Right, I've got 3 councillors indicating. I've got Councillor Oswald, Councillor Lavery and Councillor Morgan. So, Councillor Oswald, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, one of the things that we were worried about initially with this HS2 and traffic movements was Swateley's roundabout, because we all know it and we all know what it's like up there. Thankfully, this report goes some way to say that there's going to be no pressure on Swateley's roundabout, and I'm quite pleased about that. Also, Harville Road, and I think that's quite good, and I'm glad that's in the report. And also, I think it's exemplary that HS2 are going to take control of the traffic light system for the crossroads for the 2 compounds. So I'm quite happy with that. And I think for me, the rest of the report is pretty straightforward, really. So I'm happy with it, Chairman. And just for the sake of anything else, I'll move the officer's recommendation and then anybody else to say what they like. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Councillor Oswald, for your comments. We'll take Councillor Lavery and then Councillor Morgan soon after. So over to you, Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Chairman. As the legal officer has clearly told us, this application meets the statutory tests. We have no grounds to impose conditions upon it. I, like Councillor Oswald, I'm happy that it doesn't involve the Harville Road or the Swateley's roundabout, both of which are major concerns, and that traffic lights have been provided. So I think in the terms of the Act, I think as much as has been done as we are capable of achieving, and therefore I would be happy to second officer recommendations.
Okay, no, thank you very much for that, Councillor Lavery. Councillor Morgan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't think I can add much more to this. I mean, you know, for the safety of all road users, having the traffic lights there is possibly the best option of the bunch. So, Councillor Oswald and Lavery have already said it. So, yeah, I'm going to go with officer's recommendations.
No, thank you very much for that, Councillor Morgan. I'm not seeing any councillors indicate, and we can see Councillor Duncan now. So you've joined us, so we can see you now. Let's hopefully we can hear you. So we're moved and we're seconded, so we can move to the vote. Councillor Lavery, you seconded. Councillor Brightman. Councillor Brightman.
You appear to. Oh, hang on. You are unmuted, Councillor. So, can you try speaking? No, we can't. We can't hear you. I think we're going to have to move past that, Councillor.
Okay, we'll move past Councillor Brightman. Councillor Hagger.
Yes, Chair, for officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morgan, I think I know which way you're going, but for completeness.
For Mr.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
4.
Yeah, and we heard you loud and clear. And Councillor Oswald, you moved. So in the absence of a vote from Councillor Brightman, I make that 5 votes for approval. Neil, is that correct?
Correct, Chairman.
Okay, then I can confirm that item 6 this evening is approved. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating in that debate. Okay, that moves us on swiftly to agenda item 7 this evening, which is Braintree Industrial Estate in Braintree Road, South Ruislip. Ian, can you take us through this application, please?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just going to present the screen again. Hopefully you can see that now. Excellent.
All good.
Right, so this is an application again under Schedule 17 of the HS2 Act, various parts, which I'll come on to in due course. And it's a request for approval of plans and specifications under condition imposed by Schedule 17 of the HS2 Act relating to a head house compound, which includes the vent shaft head house building, fan room building, 2 ventilation stacks, a road vehicle parking, an auto transformer station, earthworks for retaining walls, and associated fencing and artificial lighting. So the matter is for approval tonight, and it's entirely appropriate for us to approve or refuse any elements of these as necessary. So if we were to raise concerns over one element, that would not stop us approving other elements. So just bear that in mind if we do get onto that later on. So there's building works under Schedule 17, paragraph 2. Paragraph 3 for the road vehicle parking. The transformer is under paragraph 3. Earthworks also under paragraph 3, as well as fencing and artificial lighting. They've all got slightly different grounds under which they can be approved. So, for example, the fencing, we can only really comment on the alignment, not the actual type. In terms of the lighting, it's just the location of the columns or the lighting equipment. And earthworks is a bit more of a wider scope, so we can comment on local environment, local amenity, and whether or not it should preserve an archaeological site or a nature conservation site. In terms of the transformer, it's just the location, not what it looks like. The road vehicle parking, again, is just its location. And finally, the building works at the top is the designed external appearance relating to local amenity, local environment, and whether or not it protects or preserves a site of archaeological importance or nature conservation value. So that's what's before us tonight, but essentially it's just looking at a planning application as we normally would in the round. So all these elements are contained on the plans. The red line boundary, you might be familiar with the site. It's a business park area, limited residential receptors north of the existing Chiltern line, which you can see towards the crossing the southern end of that site at the minute. There's residential properties to the south of that, but essentially it's hidden away in what is a very heavily developed business area with an Asda to the east, being an home store to the north, and then various bits and pieces to the northwest. So it's not what would be described as a visually sensitive area. Forgive me for suggesting that to the people of Asda, who I'm sure are very proud of their store, but essentially that is not what we would say is a visually sensitive area. HS2 plan, just showing the red line, and here you can see the alignment of HS2, which is this dotted line here, which goes underneath the vent shaft head house here. So in detail, I don't expect you to be able to see all the elements of this, but this was a plan submitted in the plans pack. So I'll just go through it in a little bit of detail. So this area here, this darker grey area to the northeast of the plan, this is to be subject of a future restoration submission. HS2 have already done some works here, so they will need to restore this part of the site in accordance with agreement. This what will come before this committee in due course. So that's not before the committee tonight. So the area is basically the lighter grey area surrounding you can just vaguely see a red line plan here. So there's fencing all around it, so that is up for approval. The alignment of that fencing, not the type. The transformer station, which is here, again, there's fencing around it, so the alignment of the fencing and the location of the transformer. The road vehicle park, which is this hashed area all around here, and then the main building itself. 2 elements of drainage areas, which are form part of the earthworks, which we'll come on to in a bit more detail. And then lighting columns, which are all around the site, and particularly around on the boundary of the site. And I'll come on to a plan on that in due course. And then obviously the earthworks to create the platform here is before us. So in terms of the landscaping is not actually before us, but the green roof forms part of the actual building structure. So that is, it's nice to see that HS2 have adopted a sustainable approach to design, more so than other developers, and included green roofs on the building, which is supported by officers. And then the two balancing lagoons, which I'll come on to in a bit more detail, essentially water holding areas, they're going to be readily landscaped with trees. And then obviously the transformer station over here towards the northeast of the site is also going to be landscaped and screening, which will ultimately screen the rest of the site. So in terms of landscaping, it's quite it's not overly excessive, but it's better than what's there now, and it's considered to be appropriate. But again, that's not before this committee tonight. That'll be part of a bringing into use application in due course. In terms of the size of the building, I've taken some plans from the plans back to illustrate this. It's approximately 15 meters high, so 4 stories. And then it's about 60 meters long, and it's tucked in behind the existing business park area and just to the west of the existing Asda. I mean, it's a functional building. There's not really much more to say on that than it's just a functional building. I'll come on to the materials in the next slides. Just to note on this one, there's an overhang on the side facing the Chiltern line. And just to bear that in mind, keep that in your memories for when we come on to the lighting, because there's some lighting issues around that particular overhang. So two separate plans, cutaways. Again, one on the north, you can top of the screen. Sorry, you can just see the overhang there, give you some sort of sense of perspective with the people and the trees to the around the lagoons and the transformer. Cross section showing the part of the site that is not up for approval, which is the bit below ground. That's not for this committee. Any below ground works are not required to be consented by planning authority, but it's there to illustrate what this what the purpose of this structure is, and to see just put it into context with the HS2 underneath it. Now, in terms of what this vent shaft actually is, I'm just going to read some bits and pieces from HS2 Limited. So the South Ruislip vent shaft is a ventilation and emergency intervention shaft. It's to be used in an emergency situation, as well as obviously providing ongoing ventilation for the high-speed line itself. So in an emergency situation, the vent shaft will take smoke away from the tunnels below, but it is also a dedicated intervention point. So in the event of an emergency, such as a fire or something like that, emergency crews will use the South Ruislip vent shaft to gain access to the Northolt tunnels via dedicated fire brigade access, stairs and/or lift contained within the head house. It is not an evacuation point. We dealt previously at the committee with the tunnel portal over in West Ruislip. That would be the evacuation point. That's the first part of the tunnel section from London, where the train would go up into open air, so a lot easier to get passengers out. This is just an intervention for emergency services. So the hard standing areas that you saw in the previous plan is just to accommodate emergency vehicles, not to accommodate hundreds of people from the trains themselves. So I just wanted to just explain to you exactly what this area is supposed to be doing. What it looks like, so the design external appearances before the committee tonight. And I think generally officers are supportive of the design. It's not a concrete box. There's been some element of interesting design attached to it. I'm not convinced that they've managed to depict this area of Ruislip in a complete real sense. I think people of Ruislip would not really recognise this. An artist has been a little bit excited here with his trees and his landscaping and removal of other buildings. But what you do get a sense of is some of the landscaping that they will be putting in at some point, and a sense of the building. So we come on to the materials. The finish is in a timber or a similar modified softwood, so it's a natural organic sense to it. there's the green roof, which is going to be included, and then sort of darker material around it. So in terms of design external appearance, officers are generally supportive of it, particularly given its location. It's not overly visually sensitive, and also because of the buildings around it. I think there is some artistic merit in what is essentially a functional item. So officers have found no reason to raise objections to its external appearance. Unfortunately, Chair, and have to make an apology here, but I don't believe this plan was in the original presentation pack, so you'll have to forgive me on that one. It's the lighting plan. It was supposed to be in there, but for some reason I found that it wasn't, but it's need to be included for completeness. So as you can see, the lighting plan around the edge of the security fencing, and then this little extract here shows the overhang, which I mentioned earlier. That's going to have lighting attached to it as well. So this is all security lighting. It's on sensors, and you can see the light spill from the lower lux levels that they are using. So the sensitive receptors are on the southern end of the Chiltern line, and they would be the primary cause of concern. But you can see the light levels wouldn't spill beyond the existing Chiltern line, so there would be no harm there. And I mentioned earlier that the drainage plans were important. The area is it's a mixture of hard standing and earth at the minute, so there is some natural attenuation. Covering all in hard standing would obviously increase the risk of flooding. Flood officers raised concerns initially, and as you're well aware, Chairman, our approach to these applications, if we don't have sufficient information, then we would either present it to you as a refusal if HS2 Limited were not prepared to provide us with any information, or simply choose not to determine it in accordance with the Court of Appeal decision, or to go back to HS2 Limited and seek information. So that's what we did. We advised them that we wouldn't be taking this to committee until we had drainage information, because we considered the design external appearance would have a negative impact if we didn't see those drainage impacts on the local environment. So thankfully, HS2 Limited responded positively to that request, and they've showed these drainage plans. Although they've presented them as not being as part of the submission for approval, that's perfectly within our entitlement to bring those plans into the scope of the permission. And you can see two retention basins, just at the northwestern edge and southeastern edge, and an attenuation tank. So the discharge rates in these during a storm event would be an improvement on what's there at the minute. The site is on the very edge of a critical drainage area that stems across pretty much most of Ruislip to the north of this area. So it's on the very edge. So the reduction in site levels as presented, the use of the retention basins, the use of the attenuation tanks would suggest that the drainage arrangement would be better after this development than before. And so we're thankful for HS2 for providing this information, and we deem it acceptable. So in terms of the bits and pieces that are up for approval, you'll see those largely in the bold text there. So in terms of the design of the external appearance of the building, officers have no objections. No objections to the lighting layout, no objections to the fencing layout. The drainage elements secure an appropriate impact on the local environment and local amenity, and the road vehicle parking is acceptable as well. So, Chairman, the recommendation is approval and subject to the works proceeding in accordance with the drainage plans as well as the submitted plans package. So, no more from me, Chairman. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much for taking the members through that application. A lot to cover off there, and good that we're getting some details back from HS2 as well. But before we go over to members, I'm going to ask Raj just to come in, see if anything you'd like to add to that, Raj.
Hello, thank you again, Chairman. I hope you can all hear me clearly. Just some brief comments from me on this application. It's obviously an application under paragraphs 2 and 3 of Schedule 17 of the High Speed 2 Act, and it's broken down into 6 sections, which Ian has outlined in his presentation to yourselves. And This is an application which members of the subcommittee will be familiar with, as you have dealt with a number of similar applications in the past. The first part of the legal test, which I referred to earlier, is whether high-speed 2 limited provided sufficient information. Ian has clarified that they have. They do now seem to be taking a more cooperative approach than was hitherto the case. It seems that the Court of Appeal decision has focused their minds, and when we do ask them for additional information, they are more likely to provide it now than they were in the past. So that is a good outcome. So we can put a tick to that particular part. The second part is whether there are any statutory grounds for refusing the application. And as Ian has made clear in his presentation, and as is expressed in the body of the report, none of these grounds are actually engaged in relation to this Schedule 17 application. I won't read those grounds out because you will be familiar with them. They are the usual culprits. Prejudicial effects on road safety, archaeological impacts, ecology, etc. So I won't bore members with those, with reciting those grounds. The third part is whether there are any statutory grounds for imposing any conditions if members are minded to approve the application. There is no information before the subcommittee tonight as to the appropriateness of conditions. They're not mentioned in the report, and as Ian has also alluded to in his presentation, there is no real basis for imposing any conditions in this particular case. So it is a straightforward application which is recommended for approval, and as with the previous application, it is legally permissible for the subcommittee to approve it. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much for that, Raj, taking us through that. My screen blipped out a bit there, but I've got Councillor Lavery, Councillor Morgan and Councillor Hagger and Councillor Duncan. So we'll start with Councillor Lavery.
Thank you, Chairman. Borough Solicitor has confirmed that we have sufficient information. We have no statutory grounds to refuse or impose conditions. This is a 4-storey building on a site where the ground level drops away from the main road, and actually will be hidden by a rather large Asda, and in fact the rear view of a rather large Asda car park. So yes, I think Ian said it wasn't the most attractive area, and certainly the artists have used quite a lot of license in relation to what I know of that part of the world. It is a functional building. It's nice to see it has a green roof, and that drainage has been properly dealt with, and that we've got a timber effect to the construction. I can see no problems with this application given its location. It's hidden away next to the railway line, and the only properties are well the other side of it. So on that basis, I will move off the recommendations.
Thank you very much for your comments there, Councillor Lavery. I've got Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to second that proposal, but before I do have a question to ask officers, and that is the access route to be used to the actual site. I can't actually see a direct road going into the site, you know, other than perhaps going down the side of BMI and using B&M using up their lorry parking space, or down Braintree. Is it Braintree Road down the housing estate and across there? Or maybe even looks like a little service road that runs parallel to the Chiltern line. Could officers confirm which route is actually going to be used? Thank you, Mr.
Ian,
Chair.
thank you, Councillor. Ian, if you could come in on those points.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Morgan. There is a new access road to be created alongside, it's the B&M site, I think, that down there. The lorry route application for this one was before the committee some time ago, so we did have concerns about how those lorries would, it's in the construction of this property, how the lorries would get it back onto the main road out of the, which is basically shared with the retail park. But there would be a new access site down to this one by the B&M store. The access will be before this committee in due course as part of a restoration scheme. So the access isn't technically before this committee tonight, but I can provide further details at a later date when they become available from HS2 Limited. But it is important to note that the access to this site is not before the committee tonight. But as I understand it, there is going to be new access to the site by the B&M store.
Okay. Councillor Morgan, you want to come back on that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I fully appreciate and understand that the access road is not part of tonight's discussion. However, I think it's something that we do need to make to record going forward. That I would actually have severe problems with using going through the actual shopping area, going down the side of B&M homes or anywhere like that, knowing that you're going to have so many people there shopping. So maybe when officers start looking, that they can take that into consideration. But as I said earlier, I'm quite happy to support the officers' recommendations on this and second if Councillor Lavery has proposed it. Thank you.
No, thank you for that, Councillor Morgan. I've got Councillor Hagger, followed by Councillor Duncan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, a good report, actually, quite comprehensive. And my office, actually, colleagues have said most of what I was going to say. But what I did want to point out, actually, which I was really pleased with, because that site has been a site in the past that has caused or can cause antisocial behaviour around that area. So actually, for me, I was quite pleased to see that and it does actually comply and preserve with the local amenity. So I did want to point that out because I think that's a really good thing. And also, because I know it's not often that we have good things that come through on HS2, but the other thing was with the CCTV cameras as well. So I think all of that actually comes together quite nicely, because that my only concern would be, the antisocial behaviour and making sure that the site is completely non-accessible by anyone around there. I think that was my only concern. I can see that's actually been covered quite thoroughly in this. The site itself is actually quite a good location, I believe, because it is, as you say, it's at the back of Asda. And I agree the artist design isn't quite how it should be. So we needed a bit of a better design with some of the Asdas and the B&M. I know it well. But yes, I mean, I'm quite happy. I think it is a good, solid report, actually. And it's really good to see that there are some other issues that have been addressed here that are not like the CC. I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Hagger. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, it shows the strangeness of the position that we're in, that we're in a position where an item can be put before us for a fairly large lump of building, and we're not allowed to comment on or talk about the access arrangements. I mean, it really turns planning on its head, doesn't it? But that's the position that we've been put in, and that's the legal position. The one thing I did want to ask is, because it is such a big lump of a building, and the flooding and drainage issues, did we have any discussion about possibly having green walls to this building, or partial green walls? I mean, I welcome the green roof, but it would have just been something that might have helped with that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Ian, do you want to come in on the point of green walls?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Duncan. You'll remember that we sought a green wall on one of the previous head house schemes, which we put a condition on. Raj may want to give us an update on that one, but that went to planning appeal, and the planning inspector decided in favour of HS2. So the green wall was deemed to be part of the landscaping, and as I suggested, that the landscaping is not part of the approval tonight for this committee. I mean, in terms of flooding, the green wall is of negligible benefit, but in terms of screening the site from the residential properties the other side, I think a green wall would be a nice addition in this particular location, and it's something that officers will put to HS2 Limited when we get onto the landscaping scheme and bring into use. So that will be before the committee at some point in the future, but it's important to say that it's not part of the structure as such. Therefore, it's not part of the design and external appearance of this development. It's part of the mitigation, which comes at a later date. And you're absolutely right, Councillor, this does put planning on its head. It makes it very difficult for officers to always respond. When I say we dealt with the access some months ago, and we deal with some of the mitigation some months hence. But it's not for the committee tonight, but the issue is very much noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Duncan, you okay with that?
Yes, thank you. I was interested that an inspector overturned the living wall, green wall, and perhaps in light of the government's of iterations regarding climate change and environment changes, that because this act, is now sort of a few years ago, maybe the emphasis will change by the time we come to talk about landscaping with HS2. So hopefully that may happen in the future. I don't give up hope about it anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure this committee will get a second bite at the cherry on this one when it comes to the landscaping, when it comes back in front of us at some point in the future. Okay, I'm not seeing any other members indicate. We are moved and seconded, so I think we'll go to the vote on this one.
Councillor, can I just double check? Councillor Lavery has raised a hand. Can I just double check? Is that an error, or did he have something to say?
No, that's me forgetting to turn it off.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, there's a new dimension to these meetings now with the raised hand button, so I'm going to have fun with that future meetings. Okay, we are moved, we are seconded. Councillor Lavery moved. Councillor Brightman, I don't think we've got Neil, have we? So we'll go to Councillor Hagger.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Morgan seconded. So Councillor Duncan.
4, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, 4, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Neil, I'll make that 5 out of 5. Do you agree?
Agreed,
Okay,
Chairman.
I can confirm agenda item 7 this evening is approved. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you to officers and members this evening. That brings us to the end. For anybody watching on YouTube, I wish you a good night.
Thank you and good night.
Good night.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
everybody.
everyone. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night all. Bye.